What is the most pressing ethical or policy question your office is wrestling with right now when it comes to AI? And I think we've kind of almost maybe brought this one up slightly before, but we'll delve into it again. Again, policy has cropped up, but yeah, ethical use of AI is always a hot topic, something we're very passionate about here at Genio, as I'm sure many of you know. So yeah, I'd be interested to get your thoughts on this one.
I think for me, from a tutorial coordinator standpoint specifically, the biggest challenge for us is just making sure that we're staying on the same page that our student advocacy and accountability office is on, and then making sure that we're guiding our tutors based on those guidelines. So we're always trying to err on the side of caution. We have our own internal AI usage policy for our tutors, where it's if the syllabus doesn't say anything, assume it's not allowed. And then it's kind of a graded level of support, encouragement, and information just based on what the syllabus dictates. But the second layer to that is how specific are the instructors being with their syllabi? What additional levels of communication need to go forward for the students so that they can understand exactly what is and is not permissible for that particular course. So I think that's the biggest thing we're kind of grappling with right now from a tutorial center standpoint, is making sure that we are guiding our tutors based on the guidelines of the institution so that the students still feel supported. We're still staying on the cutting edge of what tools are coming down the line for students, but we're not pushing our tutors right into the lion's den of being an accomplice in academic integrity violations.
Mm, mm. That's interesting. With regards to that, then, could there be a scenario where tutors maybe not mark down this part of the course as being, a student being able to use AI on this particular topic or area of the course as per, maybe it's conflicting with the campus policy, right? So in this scenario, the student really should be allowed to use AI, but as far as they're concerned, they're not allowed to. That is that kind of something that may happen? I know
We've
Scott's kind
we've
of nodding his
seen
head
some
there.
of that friction, absolutely. And we've also seen a lot of very ambiguous language around AI. And I think part of that is a lot of people hear AI and assume LLM, but AI
Mhm.
is such a big umbrella. I mean, the pink and blue squiggles on your Word document, that's AI too. It's just it looks different. So it's a lot of seeking clarity. And if we're ever in a gray area, putting it in front of the instructor and having the instructor kind of take the role of clarifying exactly what that is so that we've got documented guidance from the instructor where if something does come up later where, oh, this wasn't supposed to be used, there can always be an email reference back going, oh, so sorry, like this was the conversation I had. I thought we approved XYZ, just so that it's not sitting in that gray area of, oh, well, I said no AI, so that's not allowed. And now we're getting a zero on that assignment when maybe we could have had a conversation earlier, had something confirmed in writing on what is and isn't allowed so that the accountability kind of falls where it appropriately should based on the expectations of the instructor. But yes, a lot of that ambiguity, right? We don't have continuity across. I mean, we're not even talking from college to college. Like you said, it's from the campus wide policy down to the instructor of one particular course. So I think that's one of the bigger challenges is getting everyone on the same page.
Yeah, yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I can imagine then the after effect of that is if there is a problem that's identified, how quickly can we actually remedy that? I think like Scott mentioned earlier with, kind of getting rid of some of these bottlenecks, if there's students in a scenario like that, who do they go to talk to? Do they know?
Yeah.
How quick is that process? Is it a bit too late by that point? So those are all, yeah, the real issues, I guess. Yeah, go ahead, Hannah. I see you've unmuted yourself there.
Yeah, just to follow up on Rosie's point too, as far as policy goes, like we are building the ship as it's sailing. I think everybody is, because it just AI took off and now we're reacting to it. And so that is a priority for my institution. I think that's probably best practice for most institutions to have something in writing. What we're faced with right now, and we're really going through the same process that Rosie was talking about with instructors, but lots of students are asking to be able to use AI as an accommodation, even if the instructor doesn't permit it. And so that's a toughie. We're going through our interactive process, doing fundamental alterations, working one-on-one with instructors to determine when it is useful in coursework, if it's able to be used at all in the course, in the major, in the college. So we're having to analyze things on multiple levels. And I think that to the policy question, is tough when there's not an overarching university policy. So we're having to get really in the weeds with instructors. When if we had an overarching policy, maybe we could use that, still do those individual interactive processes with the student and the faculty, but we could have a little bit more guidance on how the institution is viewing AI.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Go ahead,
Uh,
Scott.
Rosie and Hannah nailed it. So I'll just add an anecdote to illustrate how these challenges are in real life. I had a student last semester who was blind, and she was taking a Braille reader, and she was taking an anthropology class. And part of the class exam was to identify skulls and bones, and through their characteristics, visually, identify their genus. Now, this obviously wasn't possible, and the images were so complex, we couldn't just raise the make tactile font. So I came up with a solution. I said, well, why don't you just feed the image into AI, have it describe it to you, and based off of those descriptions and your mastery of the descriptions in the textbook, that should be able to accommodate you. She was thrilled with that solution. The instructor was less than thrilled with the solution and insisted that no, a human being had to sit there and describe the skulls to her. I went back and forth with the instructor trying to figure out what the difference was between the two and how logistically difficult that would be for the student. And in my opinion, a removal of her personal agency. But that this is an illustration of the challenges we face as practitioners and facilitators of accessible design and accommodations, even with doctor's notes, even with the law behind us. That tends to be irrelevant when contrasted with academic freedom. And even if we are in the right, as Hannah was talking about, how long will that take, that process, to prove that we are right and get those accommodations in place? Probably much too late for the student to benefit. I'm going to answer this quickly. Melanie's asking, could you have the actual skulls for her to touch? No, unfortunately, because there were so many bones and fragments in the textbook. It was really looking at these images and being able to describe it. So we needed a description. AI provided it, but because of academic freedom and the misunderstanding of what AI would do, it just wasn't possible. And yes, we could have 3D printed the skulls, but again, the time it takes to do this, the resources to do that, we're looking for the quickest solution for agency for the student.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's one of the big issues, isn't it? It's kind of we're discussing now something that I don't know, we might not get in place until next fall semester, realistically, in terms of changing policy and getting everyone on the same wavelength as well. So I mean, this is why these kind of conversations are so important, because it really does take a lot of planning and a lot of people to be involved in that. And I think, yeah, one of the big things I think I've taken from this is that likely if we don't have the policy in place and we do run into a problem, it's probably not going to be resolved that quickly. And in some cases, or most cases, that'll probably be too late for the student. So, yeah, some really interesting thoughts there. I appreciate that.